Let's talk about high-growth franchise systems. We recently completed a study of over 400 different franchisors from across several industries, all here in the United States. In that study, we gathered information from FDDs and various other places. We identified 70 different franchise systems that had growth rates in 2023 of over 20%. We started to look in to see if we could find any characteristics that were the same. Let's give you a general profile of these systems first. They averaged around 64 units, so they weren't humongous systems. 46% of them had startup costs of less than $500,000. In fact, only 7 of them had startup costs of over $1 million. Lastly, there was no major difference between high-growth systems and non-high-growth systems in the percentage of affiliate stores or locations they had, typically between 12 to 16%. With that, let's dive in. Presenting an item 19 is always a hot topic, and typically the industry averages around 60%. Of the 400 that we sampled, 58% of franchise systems presented item 19 data. However, of high growth franchise systems, 70% presented financial data in their item 19. Now, what does this tell us? It tells us that it's easier to sell a franchise system the more financial information you're disclosing to prospects. And this makes sense. The easier of a time that prospects have in figuring out what the financial implications or financial upside of a potential opportunity is, the easier that sale is going to be. The next data we looked at was how many franchisors were active suppliers to their franchisees. Well, what we found is over the entire population, about 66% of franchisors were supplying some sort of product to their franchisees. However, from our high growth franchisees, that number was less. It was just over 50%. So what does this tell us? It tells us that high growth franchisors probably are spending more time on marketing and getting out and finding prospects than they are figuring out how to sell more to their current franchisees. Now, as a CFO, trust me, I don't blame those systems that are trying to do that. But again, it's a data point that's interesting to examine. Next, let's look at the number of unique visitors that a franchisor is able to generate to their website on a month-to-month basis. Well, our high-growth franchisors were on average generating 140,000 unique visitors to their website. Franchise systems growing less than 20% were averaging only 54,000 people to their site on a monthly basis. So what does this mean? It means that a stronger web presence reflected by number of visitors to a website does make a difference in terms of high growth and low growth franchisors. Next, let's look at the number of unopened franchises in a system. And this is going to be a little bit counterintuitive. In our high growth franchise systems, 25% of the franchises sold as of December 31st of 2023 were unopened. In our franchise systems that were growing less than 20%, only 10% were unopened. What does this tell us? Systems that are dedicating resources to current franchise support, opening support, aren't necessarily growing at a higher rate. Why is that? Every business only has a certain amount of resources that they can allocate to growth. Those that are spending those resources on internal support aren't spending those resources on marketing or drumming up prospects. And as a result, their growth rate reflects that. Next, let's look at combined followers on Instagram and Facebook. And again, counterintuitive. Our high growth franchisors have on average 30,000 followers between Instagram and Facebook. Our low growth franchisors averaged 74,000. What does this tell you? Growing your Facebook, growing your Instagram, while not necessarily unimportant, is not going to have a significant impact on what your overall growth rate is. Next, let's look at the nationwide concentration of franchise units. Our low growth franchisors average 47% of their units in their top 3 states. What does that mean? If we take a look at the entire country, well, which 3 states have the most of this concept? If we looked at just those 3 states, 47% of the system was in those 3 states. If we looked at high growth franchise systems, 61% of their stores were in their top 3 states. That means a higher concentration of stores indicates a focused, effective marketing penetration strategy for high growth franchises. The more that franchises are able to put their resources into a confined area, the faster they're able to grow. What does this all tell us? Well, at Krieger Analytics, we've done a lot of research into franchise growth. And from the best we can tell, one of the biggest indicators of growth is overall market awareness. Those systems who are able to grow market awareness typically are able to grow units at a much faster rate. We always tell franchisees, listen, while support is important, what's more important is that your franchisor is growing the brand, is making sure people are aware of the brand. If you're interested in more data like this, contact us.